good early morning intuitives, as it is not even 5 o'clock yet, but I have to be at work at 6. Yeah, I haven't been putting a lot up this week. It's been a combination of things. Busier at work, but I can usually, make up for that. But I have a side project going on at my older friends who are very wealthy. I'm taking care of their Pennsylvania estate while they're visiting their estate in New England, and I'm working on a side project there. I'm doing some, work after my regular day's work at the country club. And I also want to mention, I'm usually pretty good at answering comments. I haven't been this past week, and don't think I'm ignoring you. There is a reason for that. My phone is on its last legs, and I'm replacing it tomorrow because of my work schedule and stuff. I haven't been able to get to the store to upgrade it, which I'm overdue for, because between work and, like I said, my side project, there really just hasn't been time to do it while the store is open. And as usual, I work 6 days a week, and it just happens that Sunday is my day off this week, so obviously that's when I had time to do it. So if you're leaving comments and wondering why I'm not answering, it's because I normally do that at work when I have a little bit of downtime, and because of the way this has not been functioning, I haven't been able to do that, and I've been trying to use my phone as little as possible because it really is on its last legs, and I've known all week that I had to do the best I can to limp it along for one more week. Ugh, it's dusty down here. Very dusty. But I wanted to do a video because it's been on my mind, and it's an important one, as it's an important thing for INFJs to know, because it's certainly something that can further help us do the right thing. And that is, time does validate our intuition. So over time, an INFJ's intuitive thoughts, perhaps something we may speak up about and be chastised for at the time, eventually, time will prove us right. It may take longer than you want, but time will prove us right. And the example I want to give is from my personal life survey. It seems to like when I do that. And this relates to, if you watched my videos, like about Chestertology, where I grew up, or better yet, the INFJ versus the Queen Bee narcissist. This ties into a lot of the things I talk about in there, but eventually your intuition is proven right. The example is, I've spoken before how my mother's older sister is like the queen bee narcissist of all the boomer narcs in this area, and they literally treat her as a queen and have admitted to doing so. They admit that she is, seen as some sort of regal entity with authority, not a figurehead. She has, in their minds, the divine right of kings or queens in this case. But one of her biggest tenets seems to be is the most important thing is stuff, and accumulating more materialistic items, and then telling people about it and feeling superior because of your accumulation of material things. Well, in my family, my last living relative of the World War II generation, has recently been put in a nursing home. He's physically frail. He's 96 years old. Now, mentally, he's still sharp. He's not in any mental decline at all, but he's on hospice. His body is failing him, and frankly, he has stated many times that he wants to die. I can't see how it'd be fun. His wife died a few years ago, and all his friends are going, why it would be, he has described himself as, a remnant of an era that is gone, which I understand, and he's a bit of a crotchety guy. I mean, he always was. I understand he's 96 now, but he was like that 30 years ago. I clearly remember. I'll just give you a pretty accurate representation of him, and people have said this over the years. This uncle that I'm talking about, basically, if you can, picture Prince Philip, who recently died, Queen Elizabeth's husband. Picture Prince Philip, because my uncle was a Navy man too, but basically picture if Prince Philip were a middle-class American. That is a very strong representation of this uncle, especially in terms of gaffe and saying whatever the hell you want to say and not caring. That very much is, and being a product, very much a product of that generation. That's who my uncle is. So he is letting his feelings be known about people, and he recently went off on my mother's sister's only son, the quote crown prince of Chestertology, the man who hasn't worked since 2004, lives off of his wife, who is a very hardworking ICU nurse supervisor, and he has multiple affairs and just spends her money pretty much. And, I mean, he is a volunteer firefighter when he feels like it, but my uncle has seen things over the years and for whatever reason kept quiet, but obviously he has no reason to keep quiet anymore. He's 96 years old and on hospice. I don't think there could be a better example of a man with nothing to lose. So he went off on him and also went off on my aunt, the Queen, which nobody else will do because it's Genie. I don't know what that means. I don't, just because she thinks she's some kind of queen, they treat her as such. The things she's done, I wouldn't, I wouldn't not call somebody out just because they think they're royalty, or indeed if they were actually royalty. Hey, don't believe me? Put me in the same room with Prince Andrew and see what happens. I dare you. So, I don't know, he's my prince, but he's a scumbag, and he's a scumbag. But anyway, and well, I've seen that in the news for kudos on Prince William for basically telling his grandmother if he's at this 70th, Jubilee celebration, I'm not showing up. So good for him for having, some kind of backbone. No matter who you are, what your title is, if you have a fucked up family, you must call out and deal with said fucked up family. But my uncle recently went off on my aunt, who's 75, and her wanting like a bunch of the stuff from his house as they're getting ready to sell it, as he's in a nursing home. And he actually said and went on a long rant. He's like, she's 75 years old. What does she want stuff for? What's wrong with her? She thinks everything is about stuff, and the more stuff you accumulate is, based on your value as a person. And this is something I've been saying for 20 years, and, for a good chunk of that time, people have been telling me off and telling me that I'm, crazy, and I'm, seeing things that aren't there, and I'm a conspiracy theorist. But that gets back to my main point. Over time, your intuition is validated as an INFJ. So, yes, our intuition is the strongest, and we can put the pieces of the puzzle together. That's how NI works, and we're not even really sure how it works. Most people, can't do that. Now, when we basically help them along, it can go pretty much in two main categories. Other intuitives, i.e. other people with introverted intuition, but it's not their dominant function, like ENFJs. If we give them a little intuitive push, they'll put the pieces of the puzzle together pretty quick. Sensor types who are not intuitive at all, it takes time. Now, this is a big reason why I'm making this video. As INFJs, we have very strong integrity, and we have the gift and curse of introverted intuition. And it's important to our integrity and who we are to do the right thing, and that includes calling out, people who are narcissistic and exploit and abuse others. The danger of that is a lot of the times when we can put the pieces of the intuitive puzzle together and expose that person for who they are, most people don't see it at the time. Like I said, other people with introverted intuition, though not as their dominant function, yeah, if you explain it to them and give them like an hour, they'll put it together and they'll agree with you. But the majority of people, i.e. sensors, it just won't click. They just can't see what we can see. I can't explain it scientifically, but they just can't see what we can see. But while that's still important, it's important for us to do the right thing no matter what, damn the consequences kind of thing. And oh, there's consequences, when you call people out, even if you are right, but other people just don't see it or don't want to see it, you're going to face retaliation. I've gone into that before. I've faced it my whole life, and I'm still not selling out, and I'm still going to continue to call people out and do the right thing. But you are planting like seeds in their minds. So even if they don't agree with what you're trying to explain and what your intuition is telling you, it's putting in their mind the possibility that that could be true. And even though they don't have intuition, they will pay more attention to signs and things that would validate what your intuition told you and what you tried to tell them. And it may take years. It may take years for them to get enough examples to realize that, what you said as an INFJ and tried to warn them about is true. And that certainly seems to be the case with my aunt, the queen bee narc. Uh, the more brazen she gets and the more that she self-deludes herself to thinking that she's some kind of royalty and can do whatever she wants, and the more, well, my cousin, her son, has always been very brazen and out in the open with who he is, but he thinks because he's him, there's a different set of rules because his mommy told him so. Point is people will see that, and if you as an INFJ speak up about what you see intuitively and what's really going on and try to warn people about it, eventually it will click for them. Eventually there'll be so many examples of what you were trying to say that it will click and they'll realize that you were right all along. Another big example of this I have many years ago, back when I lived in Toronto in 2007, 2008. I had a friend up there and I kind of had a crush on her. There was definitely chemistry between us, but when we first met, I was still reeling from a very, very bad breakup. Well, I mean, it was my first love, and hence bad. It was the girl I was in a long-distance relationship for over a year and a half. The one who left me for a well-known NHL player. And this is after I was cheated out of my firefighter job for the first time, and, also lost my modeling contract for doing the right thing. But I was going to turn that down anyway to be a firefighter. But I'm just saying, it was a rough time. I still have to do my video on 2006 because it really was the most formative year in my life. And I often reference events that happened in that year because those events, I learned life lessons that have stuck with me ever since. And, it was a formative time for me in general because I was 19 years old at the time, too. And that definitely plays a role. But anyway, this girl met a guy like 8 years older, and I just got a bad feeling from him. Like, he was like ultra conservative, like women stay at home and you're my property kind of thing. But he was a very good bullshitter, and very, very good at pretending to be something that he wasn't. And I remember calling, like, trying to warn her and her roommates of this at the time. And of course, I was just some crackpot who drank too much beer. But after I left months later, because my scholarship was pulled, and some long story, but there was a love triangle going on. Very shortly after that summer in 2008, I was talking to one of my friends from my time up there, who I kept in touch with, and yeah, turns out my intuition was dead on. In fact, this guy told my female friend that he wanted her to drop out of school and stay home and cook all day. And end quote. Yeah. So, I didn't know what introverted intuition at the time, but I could just read this guy, and I knew, like alarm bells and sirens and red lights were flashing, and I was trying to warn someone I deeply cared about, who admittedly I wanted the opportunity to see if we had the potential to be more than friends. But I do remember saying at the time, I'm like, well, if not me, fine, but anybody but him. Yeah, that was the main point of it. But even though I was vilified at the time for seeing the signs that were clearly there, eventually my intuition was validated as this person exposed themselves for who they really are, who lined up exactly with what my intuition told me back at a time when nobody could see or wanted to believe what I could see. So that's the important part. INFJs. I hope my examples help. But you can't hold back on your intuition, particularly if your intuition is telling you something about um, somebody who is harming others, and that can be in many ways, many forms of abuse, exploitation, sexual abuse, narcissistic abuse, etc. But even if it's not going to be popular to say what your intuition is telling you, because most likely it is right, it's important to say it to get it out there, because if nothing else, even if people don't believe you at the time, people are going to pay more attention and perhaps realize fairly quickly that at least the possibility of you being correct could be possible, and they'll see the signs themselves, and eventually over time put the things together. It is frustrating, it is, but the old saying is better late than never kind of thing. And it is our duty as INFJs with this gift and curse of introverted intuition to try to expose these types of people, and try to protect those that we care about or even just know from being abused by someone who is just very good at their craft. So I hope this makes sense. I know it got kind of rambly, and I'll be back to making more, videos, like hopefully daily or at least every other day come Sunday, and I'll be answering comments, more, well, I hope regularly, or at least mostly regularly, come tomorrow. So remember, trust your intuition if it's telling you that someone's an abuser, and don't compromise your integrity on not calling that person out just because you fear retaliation.